Good morning, students. In the chapter Reproduction in Plants, the next topic that we will be studying today is vegetative propagation in plants. What is vegetative propagation? Vegetative propagation is a form of asexual reproduction in plants, in which multicellular structures become detached from the parent plant and develops into a new individual that are genetically identical to that of their parent plant. Now, we shall study the types of vegetative propagation. There are two types of vegetative propagation in plants, which is natural method of vegetative propagation and artificial method of vegetative propagation. First, we shall study the natural method of vegetative propagation. Natural vegetative propagation is a form of asexual reproduction in which a bud grows and develops into a new plant. The buds may be formed in organs such as root, stem, and leaf. At some stage, the new plant gets detached from the parent plant and starts to develop into a new plant. Some of the organs involved in vegetative propagation also serves as the organ of storage and perennation. The unit of reproductive structure used in propagation is called as reproductive propagules. Now, we shall study the vegetative propagation through leaf. In some plants, adventitious buds are developed on their leaves. When they are detached from the parent plant, they grow into a new individual plant. Example is bryophyllum. In bryophyllum, the leaf is succulent and notched on its margin. The adventitious buds develop at its notches and are called as epiphyllous bud. They develop into new plants forming a root system and become independent plant when the leaf gets decayed, as you can see in this picture. So these are the buds which develops in the margin with a proper root system. Now we shall study the vegetative propagation through stem. There are several modifications of stem which has the ability to propagate vegetatively. Now we shall study each of those structures. First amongst it is the propagation by tuber. Tubers are swollen portions of an underground stem that store food so that a plant can remain dormant over the winter. Example of tuber is potato. The axillary buds, which are commonly called as the eyes, develops over the surface of the tuber and produce shoots that grow in the following year into a new plant, as you can see in this picture. Next is the propagation by rhizome. Rhizomes are root-like stems that grow horizontally under the ground. New roots and shoots form at the nodes with shoots growing upward to form a new plantlet. The lateral buds grow out to form new rhizomes. Examples of plant which propagate by rhizome are ginger and turmeric. Next is the propagation by corm. Corm is a short, stout, fleshy underground stem that acts as a food storage structure in certain plants. It bears membranous or scaly leaves and buds. Corms store food to help the plant survive unfavourable conditions, and they produce offshoots which are known as daughter corms, as you can see in this picture. From the corm, daughter corms are formed. So which when detached from the parent corm grows into a new independent plant. Examples of plants which propagate by corm is Colocasia and banana. The next is propagation by runner. Runners are horizontal stems which grows creeping on the soil surface that forms adventitious roots at the nodes and new plants from the buds. The tiny plantlets form along the runner, as you can see in this picture. When the connection with the parent plant breaks, the new plant becomes independent. Example of the plant propagating by runner is centella. The next is propagation by Stolon. Stolon is a slender lateral branch originating from the base of the stem. It first grows obliquely above the ground and then it bends towards the ground. And when it touches the ground, it produces root and it becomes an independent plantlet when the connection with the parent plant is broken. Example of a plant propagating by Stolon is strawberry. The next is propagation by offset. Offsets are short, thick lateral branches which arises from the lower axils and grows horizontally leafless for a short distance. Then it produces a bunch of leaf and roots at the node. It is allowed to grow and develop their own root system before being separated from the parent plant. Example of plant being propagated by offsets are water lettuce and water hyacinth. The next type is propagation by sucker. Sucker is a stem that arises from the base of the stem and lies underneath the ground. After running horizontally under the ground for some distance, it obliquely comes out to give new branches and roots. When the connection with the parent plant breaks, the new plantlet becomes independent. Such a type of propagation by sucker is seen in plants such as chrysanthemum. The next is propagation by bulb. Bulbs are shortened underground storage structures. They are stems that are enclosed with fleshy concentric layers of leaves. The bulbs produce lateral buds, as you can see in this picture. As the mature plant gets to the end of its life, the lateral bud develops into a small bulb that remains attached to the base of the parent bulb. The new bulb, when separated from the parent bulb, can develop into an independent plant. Example of plant propagating by bulb is onion, lilies, tulip, etc. Now, we shall study the vegetative propagation through roots. The roots of some plant develop adventitious buds on them. These buds sprout under suitable conditions, which when detached from the parent root grows into a separate new individual. Example is a sweet potato. While in plants such as carrot, turnip and radish, they store food that is used to produce new shoots. So since we have studied the natural method of vegetative propagation, now we shall study the artificial method of vegetative propagation. Apart from the above natural methods of vegetative propagation, a number of methods are used in agriculture and horticulture to propagate plants from their parents. Such methods are said to be artificial propagation. Artificial methods of vegetative propagation includes cutting, grafting, layering and tissue culture. First, we shall study about cutting. It is a method of producing a new plant by cutting the plant part such as root, stem and leaf from the parent plant. The cut part is placed in a suitable medium for growth. It produces its own root and grows into a new plant. Depending upon the part used, it is called as root cutting, which is done in raspberry, blackberry. The next is stem cutting, which is commonly done in hibiscus and rose. And the next is leaf cutting, which is done in peperomia and snake plant. Stem cutting is widely used one for propagation. The next artificial method of propagation is grafting. In grafting, parts of two different plants are joined so that they continue to grow as one plant. The plant which is in contact with the soil is called as the stalk, and the plant used for grafting, usually the one which is selected for having desired qualities, is called as the scion. Examples of plants which are propagated by grafting are citrus, mango and apple. There are different types of grafting based upon the method of uniting the scion and the stalk. The different methods of grafting includes bud grafting, approach grafting, tongue grafting, crown grafting and wedge grafting, as you can see in this picture. The next type of artificial method of vegetative propagation is layering. In this method, the stem of the parent plant is allowed to develop the roots while still it is intact. When the roots develop, the rooted part is cut and planted to grow as a new individual plant. There are different types of layering, which includes simple layering, mound layering, air layering, serpentine layering, etc. We shall study two types of them, which is simple layering and air layering. So in simple layering, it is a method applied for plants having flexible branches, where the lower branch with leaf is bent in the ground and a part of the stem is buried in the soil and the tip of the branch is exposed above the soil, as you can see in this picture. After the roots emerges from the part of the buried stem, a cut is made in the parent plant so that the buried part grows into a new individual plant. Example of plants in which simple layering is done is jasmine. The next type of layering is air layering. In this method, the stem is girdled at the nodal region and hormones are applied to this region, which promotes rooting. This portion is then covered with damp or moist soil using a polythene sheet. Roots emerge in these branches after 2 to 4 months. Such branches are removed from the parent plant and then grown in a separate pot or planted in the ground. Examples of plants which are propagated by air layering are lychee, guava, starfruit, etc. And the last method of artificial method of vegetative propagation is tissue culture. In this method, a piece of tissue is taken from the plant and kept in a nutrient medium under controlled condition. The tissue will grow into a mass of cells which is called as the callus, as you can see in this picture, which is then placed in different medium which makes it to develop into a new plantlet, as you can see in this picture. These plantlets are then transferred to the soil. Examples of plants propagated by tissue culture are orchids, banana, etc. So, what are the advantages of vegetative propagation? Only one parent is required for propagation, and the new individual plant produced are genetically identical to the parent plant. And the next advantage is that plants require less time to grow when compared to the plants that are raised from the seeds. And it is useful for propagating plants that produce little or no seeds. And the last advantage is that two different plants with desirable characters such as disease resistance and high yield can be grafted and can be grown as a new plant with the same desirable characters. Coming to the disadvantages of vegetative propagation, Use of infected plants as parent produces infection in all the new plants produced from that parent. The vegetative structures used for propagation are usually bulky when compared to seeds, and so they are difficult to handle and store. And the next disadvantage is that new plants produced have no genetic variation. Thus, we come to the end of vegetative reproduction in plants. Thank you, students.